Would you say you want your legacy to be as a dad?
I want all my kids to be successful. I had 6 kids. I want to be 6 for 6, with college degrees and becoming independent and doing what they're supposed to do, putting better people into this world. You don't want to just have children just to have them. You want to say, okay, what kind of impact could they have on this world? What kind of impact could they have on our culture? How can they go out here and lead by example? I try to make sure I position them, let them understand, okay, how important it is to do charitable work, how important it is to kind of get behind your people, how important it is to actually just be an example of what a person can do. It's like, okay, look, I didn't have this, or I came up in this situation, but look what I was able to accomplish. And I think that's part of the American dream. Everybody looking at it and saying, man, look, I'm coming from this situation, but I end up with this because the opportunity was presented and I didn't just let it go by the wayside. I took advantage of it.
What's doing, everybody? I'm Alec Lace. Thank you for watching First Class Fatherhood. Today's guest on the podcast is NFL legend, Pro Football Hall of Fame running back Edgerrin James. I had the honor of sitting down with Edgerrin James to do this interview live in person from his condo down in Miami. Miami, of course, where he tore it up during his college days with the Hurricanes. He was selected with the 4th overall pick of the 1999 NFL Draft by the Indianapolis Colts, and the rest, as they say, is history. I'm honored to have on the podcast today. Get down there, smack the subscribe button, tap the like, and let's jump into it right now with Edgerrin James on First Class Fatherhood. All right, joining me now, First Class Father, NFL Hall of Fame legend, Edgerrin James. Thank you for giving me a few minutes of your time, and welcome to First Class Fatherhood.
All right, thanks for having me on.
All right, let's start just like this. How many kids do you have? How old are they?
Oh, I have 6 kids. I got 3 girls, 3 boys. They go from 24 to 14. I got a 10-year range.
Wow, very cool. Yeah, I got 4 kids myself. We got 3 boys, and then we got the girl on the 4th try. Otherwise, I'd have 5, and I'd be catching up to you. But we got the girl, and that was the name of that show.
Oh, okay. Yeah, nah. I got enough right now, so it's right where I wanted it, and everybody's doing exactly what I anticipated or expected them to do.
Very cool. Well, obviously, you're a legend in the NFL. Your NFL journey's been well documented. Take me back, if you could, Edgerrin, to the beginning of your fatherhood journey. About how old were you when you first became a dad, and how did becoming a father kind of change your perspective on life?
Well, I had my first child, which was my daughter. That's actually in law school right now. I had her when I was 18 at the University of Miami. So it was one of those things that was a wake-up call to say, hey, it's more than football. It's more than about me. So it made me buckle up, or really buckle down and really take things more serious. It's like, okay, I'm not living just for myself now. I'm living for this child that I have to take care of. Me and her mom, we both were young. So when you have a child and you're young, the percentages usually don't work in your favor. So that means you have to step it up, and I knew as a father I had to step it up.
Well said. And one thing I talk about a lot on my podcast, Edgerrin, is the fact that we got a fatherless crisis going on in our country. We got way too many kids growing up without a father or a father figure in their life. And I love in your Hall of Fame speech when you were thanking your mom, and you said, hey, there was no guy, I was your man. And I think it was important for a lot of people to hear that. And I always make the stipulation to say it doesn't take anything away from single moms like your mom that are working miracles out there. But it's not to say kids that grow up without a father are going to end up in a correctional facility. But 85% of kids that don't have a father in the home that are in a correctional facility come from a fatherless home. So did you have any other kind of like father figures growing up, or who took on that father role for you? Did you find it in sports, or who took on that role for you?
Well, it was a combination of uncles, family members, friends. You meet people along the way. Along the way you'll meet all these different people that are somewhat guide you. Sometimes they're directly, some of them are indirectly. And it's just a matter of the person being receptive to it. My mom did a great job of making sure she surrounded me around manly men. She made sure she put me with people that would actually have my best interest and also teach me stuff. So it's one of those things where you can look at it both ways. Not saying that growing up without a father in the home is a good thing or a bad thing. It's one of those things. It's all about how you use and how you deal with it. Because I know a lot of people that grew up with fathers, and they're not as independent as some others that didn't have fathers. So it's all depending on how it's looked at and how it's received. For me, I don't know what I would have been like if I had somebody kind of carrying the load or kind of positioning, doing everything for me. I don't know, so there's no knock on either way. I just think it's all about perception. Perspective. I think it's all about perspective and how people look at it and view it and what you do with it.
Yeah, and well said. And that's why I make that stipulation to always say it doesn't take away from the single moms out there. And it's not to say every kid who grows up without a father is going to be homeless, but 90% of homeless kids come from a fatherless home. And those stats always line up, whether that's teenage suicide, teenage pregnancy, teenage drug use. So, it's important to have the father in the home. And then switching into this then, Edgerrin, what would you consider to be the top values that you hope to instill in all your kids growing up?
Well, you always want them to be disciplined. Once they become disciplined, everything else can kind of fall in line. And, you always want them to become independent. Because if you look at the way things go and you look at the leverage from the opposition, it's usually because of somebody's dependent on something. If you keep them independent, that gives them a better chance of being who they truly are and who they really want to be, versus having to become something or do something that they really don't want to do. But because of their situation, they have to kind of abide by those rules. And that's kind of the way the world is. I try to make sure all my kids are independent, especially my daughters. You want to make sure they're independent. And once you take care of that part, you just start doing things the right way. You don't try to reinvent the wheel. You just try to do things the right way and try to make sure that they have a nice foundation. They know they always have a father in their corner. And so anything that they have going on, they're going to have 100% support, so they can really go out and be whatever it is they aspire to be.
Yeah, great stuff. And then right on that, with the discipline portion of it, what type of disciplinarian are you as a dad, and is that different than the discipline style you grew up with?
Well, as a dad, it's like, there's a transition. When you first become a father, you kind of take on the approach that you came upon. And as you get a little older, you start saying, okay, yeah, this is not the way, or this is the way you have to do it. So it all varies, For me, it's more of, you positioning them, and you kind of putting everything in front of them. You're putting everything in front of them, and you're saying, okay, look, these are the results. If this happened, and if this don't happen, these are the results. And you have to understand that there's consequences. In life, there's consequences. So you have to say, okay, look at your options. Understand that if you don't do this in school, this is what's going to happen. If you don't do these things over here, this is what's going to happen. And I think everybody wants to make the right decision. I don't think nobody goes out and say, I'm going to make the wrong decision. I think, once the results or the ramifications are put in front of a person, that helps. So I try to paint a picture to all my children early and say, okay, look, this is what happens when you go down this road. This is what happens when you go down this road. And most people, they want to do things the right way.
Yeah, good stuff. And one thing I know, just from being a son at one point in my life too, like we always look up to our dads, and we as a son, I want that approval of my father. Having a dad that is an NFL legend and a Hall of Famer, that could be a lot of pressure for a young man too. So how has that relationship been with your kids, especially your sons, that to make sure that they don't have to feel that pressure that they have to live up to your legacy or something like that?
Well, I have two sons that play sports, and one of them play basketball, one of them play football. And the one that plays football, he so happens to play the same position I play. So the expectations are there. You have to take the good with the bad. The good is, okay, I'm going to give you all the information, all the know-how, all the tools that's going to take to be a successful player. The bad is the expectation is so high that it don't give you a chance to develop. People instantly want you to be like your dad or better than your dad, or they're always going to judge you. So for some, it could go either way, and it's one of those things where, as a father, you sit back and say, okay, these are the things that I have to do to kind of help them, because they're not growing up with the same situation that I grew up in. I grew up and, it really meant something that I had to. I had no way out. They have a way out. So it doesn't mean as much to them. Not saying that they're not going to give it their all, but it's just something that's a little bit deeper inside you that you have to find to actually become this top tier player, And I can't say a person that has everything can actually find it from that. You know, you can't find it, oh, if I don't play well, I'm not going to be able to take care of my family. That's not the case. So you have to find your own reason. You have to find your own why that's going to drive you. Hopefully is, hey, I want to be better than my dad, so that drives you, you know. So those are things that you have to deal with when you have kids that's trying to play sports and they're trying to actually emulate you or better you. You know, you're going to try to give them as much information as you can. You're going to try to put them in the best situation as possible. But at the same time, some things that you can't do nothing about because we grew up under two different situations.
And have you ever gotten involved with coaching your kids as they played any of their sports? Did you always kind of step back from that and kind of coach them from the sideline or from home?
No, I've always started my kids off. I made sure that I started them off because, you know, if you be around, I'm very active in the youth football and, you know, and in the community. And I want to make sure that they learn the right way from the beginning. You know, they don't want to try to come and have to fix anything. So it was very important for me to start with them from the beginning and say, okay, yeah, this is what we're going to do. This is how you do it. This is how you tackle. This is how you do these basic things. Because if you start out the wrong way, it usually carries over, you know, and you don't want them to be where they're 12, 13, 14, and they got to kind of relearn something. You know, that takes away from your advancement.
Yeah, and on that, Edgerrin, a difficult decision for a lot of dads out there is whether or not to let their kids play tackle football. With whether or not we know true or false reports about CTE makes it even that much more difficult. So what would you say, would you feel is a good age for young kids to start playing tackle football?
You know, me, I can only go from my personal experience, and I started at 8 years old. You know, so for me, I have to stick with what I know because I'm what I would call living proof. You know, I can't sit up there and go against what somebody else may say, but my kids, you know, 8 years old, I think it's time that you can start playing football, but learn the right way. And I think that's where the problem starts at. You know, if you learn the right way, you learn the proper way to tackle, learn the proper way to take care of yourself and protect yourself, the percentages work in your favor. And I learned at an early age. And football was part of our lifestyle, you know, and so it wasn't that big a deal. And it really wasn't something that was, you know, that was pointed out or really came across as a bad thing. It was the expected thing. Now that you have all these things going on and people are coming up with reasons why, you know, the aftermath or later on in your career, you know, so it's only right they pay attention to it and they try to figure out what's going to kind of help the situation. But for me personally, I have to go with what I know.
Very cool. And I know for myself with the 4 kids, one of the things that's difficult is getting that one-on-one time with each one of them because I know how important it is for them and they all have their different interests and likes. So I'll try to make it like whether I'm going to the supermarket or something, bring a kid with me that I haven't spent enough time with that week and just have some isolated one-on-one. I would imagine it gets more challenging with 6 of them. How do you kind of work that? Do you have like one-on-one time with each kid or do you try to do it more with them all together?
No, it all depends on what's going on. But each one of my kids, you know, we have our one-on-one. We have all our time, and it's gotten better over the years, especially with them going off to college. You know, I have 3 daughters in college, and, you know, I see all of them at different times. I get a chance to see them in a different light, you know, because now, you know, they're growing up. You watch them go, you take them to the dorm, you set up their dorm, and you get them set to go into college. And, you know, for me, every night my daughters, they have to call, you know, so that's one rule we had in place. Every night they're going to call. At some point in time, they're going to call. It might be a 15-second, might be 30 seconds, might be a minute, might be an hour conversation, but it's all dependent on them. But as a father, I'm always there and I'm available to them, you know. And with my boys, sports make it easy, you know. That makes it easier because there's a natural interest in what you're doing. And then I have one son that doesn't play sport, so you have to become a little bit more creative and kind of find things that appeals to them. And so I've always made enough time for each one of them because it's too much time in the day to not be able to do it. But you can't have wasted movement. You know, you got to kind of know exactly what you're doing and how you're doing it. And I've kind of created a nice situation where I'm able to accomplish that.
Yeah, that's awesome because I know my oldest son became interested in chess at a young age, and it's a game I never played before in my life, and I learned how to play it. Now everyone in the family loves it, so we play it all together. So it's kind of like getting behind whatever their specific interest is.
Yeah, and that's where it starts at. You know, it's easy to when they play sports or when they do something that you naturally do. But when they're doing some things that you don't normally do, that's when you have to have a reality check and you have to say, okay, yeah, well, how do I get myself involved in this? How do I get myself involved in that? And I've always said, if my child wants to do something, I'm going to try to connect the dots. I'm going to try to do everything that I could do. My daughter wants to be a singer. We're putting on shows and we're doing concerts. I built the studio. I've got her singing lessons. I have everything with the best of the best. And my other daughter, said she wanted to become a plastic surgeon. I made the connection with Dr. Miami. She's down there. She goes in. She gets a chance to go in the operating room. So it's a lot of things that you can do to kind of help the cause. You say, okay, look, this is what they want to do. Let me get behind it. Let me use all the resources that I have to see if we can really see if that's what they really want to do. And that's one of the most challenging things, because they can blurt out they want to do this, but you have to be kind of sold on them wanting to do something before you go invest in all those things, because it gets expensive, and you have to say, okay, does this make sense to do it? And for me, it makes sense because, you have the child's attention, and along those talks about what they want to do, you also implement these things with about life and life lessons and helping them advance.
Yeah, and you mentioned Dr. Miami there. I had him on the podcast about a year ago. Really good guy, good dad himself too. And then Edgerrin, my youngest is my only girl. She's 7 years old right now. So I'm not looking forward to her getting a little older and taking her to the dorms just yet. But I know eventually that's coming. So I'm trying to kind of callous my mind for when that time comes. How did you kind of handle it? What kind of advice did you give when your kids became old enough, especially, your girls came old enough to start hitting that dating scene?
Well, it's one of the things where it's like, first of all, you want them to become old enough. You want them to become an adult, and I always tell them, you're going to make a better decision at 17 than you would at 16. And you're going to make a better decision at 18 than you would at 17. So you want to buy as much time as possible, and you want to try to make sure that you kind of put things in front of them to say, hey, look, these are the things that happen. These are the things that go on. And if they have a nice foundation, they have a solid foundation, it's going to be hard for them to crack. And that's why I try to make sure that make good decisions. Don't go out here and be out of control or doing things that would embarrass myself, yourself, or the family. Make sure you're doing things the right way. And you always go back to say, oh, if you did something and it appeared in the newspaper the next day, would you be embarrassed? Would you be proud? So you just paint pictures like that. And for them, everything works itself out because you have things laid out. And once you give them enough information, they're going to make the right decision. And the fact that they know that you're there and you're paying attention, that makes it even better.
Yeah, wow, incredible. Yeah, beautifully said, Edgerrin. And what was it like? Obviously, you were just newly minted here with the gold jacket into the Hall of Fame, and I seen your kids all sit in front row. What was that like for you, that moment there, to be able to have your kids there for your enshrinement in the Hall of Fame?
Oh, it was a big deal because it's one of those things to where, it's a big moment for myself, but it's still putting them on display saying, okay, look, yeah, I'm your father. This is what a father does. A father acknowledges his child. A father gets behind whatever they're doing and not ashamed or embarrassed behind it. It's like, okay, look, you got to take pride in your children. I always take pride in my children, and I make sure that they're aware of it too. Good or bad, I'm going to get behind you, but let's try to be on the good, be more on the good than anything.
Yeah, and well, obviously, your legacy is secure in the NFL now, minted into the Hall of Fame, Pro Football Hall of Fame forever. So your legacy is tight there. What would you say you want your legacy to be as a dad?
I just want I want all my kids to be successful. I had 6 kids. I want to be 6 for 6, with college degrees and becoming independent and doing what they're supposed to do, putting better people into this world. You don't want to just have children just to have them. You want to say, okay, what kind of impact could they have on this world? What kind of impact could they have on our culture? How can they go out here and lead by example? I try to make sure I position them, let them understand, okay, how important it is to do charitable work, how important it is to kind of get behind your people, how important it is to actually just be an example of what a person can do, not so much as falling into the stigma of, I don't have my mom, or I don't have this, I don't have that. It's like, okay, look, I didn't have this, or I came up in this situation, but look what I was able to accomplish. And I think that's part of the American dream. Everybody looking at it and saying, man, look, I'm coming from this situation, but I end up with this because the opportunity was presented, and I didn't just let it go by the wayside. You know, I took advantage of it.
Yeah, incredible stuff. And I know as the kids get older, for myself here, the homework gets harder. So like when my older one comes and trying to get some help in math, I'm kind of out of the loop. But if I don't have Google by me, I'm of no help to them. Do your kids, you ever help them with the homework? Do you have history is something I can help out with. I'm a big reader and stuff like that, so I have a little bit better. Is there one particular subject that you're able to help your kids out with when it comes to homework?
No, with the homework, you know, we let the tutors do that. You know, I'm helping them out with life. You know, that's the biggest assignment. You know, I try to make sure that they are taught about life experiences. You know, the school stuff is, for me, school was always easy. You know, so but you have tutors, and that's what they do. You know, so I'd rather say, okay, put the tutors in front of them, let them teach them or let them help them, but I'm gonna always be there to guide them. But for me, it's more about, okay, how can I help them advance in life? So that's the ultimate subject.
Yeah, and one thing I know that you didn't have to deal with growing up, but neither did I, is the social media. The technology has advanced, greatly in the last decade here, and especially social media could be a terrible thing. It could be a good thing. How have you kind of been able to handle or monitor like the social media stuff with them, being a celebrity or being a big name? Has that helped them or hurt them on social media, or do you kind of have any restrictions on what they're allowed to do online? How does that kind of work out?
You know, when they first came of age, you know, I used to say, okay, stay off social media unless you're about a product or a business. If you have a business you want to push, okay, yeah, we can get on social media, you know. But as they got older, you know, you start saying, okay, you know what, it's okay to actually use it, but use it with taste, use it the right way. Don't embarrass yourself. So, and for them, it's more about them just being on there, being to interact with people, and they understand, you know, the pitfalls of being on social media. And none of my kids have actually taken to it like that. They're not into it to where that's all they're doing is posting and putting things up. I told, like, they all know that we're private, so they're not gonna be posting private things or things that a family matters. You know, they're not gonna go to social media. They just use it more for the fun and the games of it, and it hasn't been a problem to date.
How about as far as your boys with playing? Are they into Madden? Do they play Madden? Do they use you in the game? Are they big into playing the video games with football?
Well, they used to play the games, you know, but now, you know, I think they're kind of outgrowing the games. You know, my one, he plays basketball, so what we do is we actually use it as a way for you to kind of enhance your basketball IQ. Make sure you're aware of the different players. Make sure you're learning all the different things about the sport, not just being on there playing a game, but utilize it, learn. If you want to be a basketball player, know every aspect of it. And I think those video games have actually advanced to a point to where they're actually showing real stuff that you can utilize as a aspiring athlete. And so I take that approach, say, okay, use the game if you need to use the game to learn stuff. You get as much information as possible, you know, because that's going to help you become a better player.
Wow, yeah, very interesting. And well, what's next for you here? Obviously, enshrined in the Hall of Fame here this year. Well, what kind of goals or plans do you have here? What's coming up next for Edgerrin James?
Well, I'm just going to continue going. You know, I'm going to continue doing business. I'm going to continue taking care of my kids and just moving forward. You know, there's no dull moments in my life. You know, I keep things going. I keep things exciting. And I always try to make sure that, you know, I'm having fun with whatever I'm doing. So there's a lot of growth, and you want to lead by example. You know, I know there's a lot of people that come from situations that I've come from, and they're watching, they're paying attention. So you always want to motivate people. You always want to show them that it's possible. And every day I'm out here showing or trying to inspire people to say, okay, it's possible. It's possible to have this and do this because I come from where you come from. And that's pretty much the gist of what I'm doing overall, you know, because I love business. I keep business going, and that won't stop. But it's fun in everything that I'm doing.
Yeah, and part of that American dream you spoke about before is about being able to say, hey, if I can do it, you can do it, and then turning around and helping the next guy come up the ladder too. So I love what you're doing, and I love what you stand for. And the last thing I want to hit you with here, Edgerrin, I love to ask all the dads that get on the podcast, what type of advice do you have for that new dad or for that about-to-be father who's out there listening?
Oh, and for a new father, you know, I always encourage them to just be there. You know, being there is bigger than financial, is bigger than anything. You know, and that's where you see a big gap at. You look at the things that go on. A lot of times we have kids in situations that we really don't want to, or really didn't we really didn't intend to, and it creates a distance between the child and the father. And I just tell any father, no matter what, I don't care where you're at financially, from a financial aspect, just make sure you're there, you know. And that's one thing that's very important. You know, they have donuts with dad, get up in the morning, go to donuts with dad. You know, if they have a practice or anything, just show up, just be there. You know, being there, it kind of solves so many problems, you know, because, you know, a lot of times these kids, they don't have support and they don't have somebody to look to. And when they can look in the stands or they can turn around, they say, that's my father, they don't have to lean on somebody else's father. You know, they don't have to sit up there and, you know, be where, okay, they're sitting around like everybody else's father's there and their father's not there. You know, you want to encourage any new father, just be there, no matter what your situation is. Just try your best to be there.
Yeah, very well said. I love the message. I got to say, this has been an honor for me. Edgerrin James, you're a first-class father all the way, and thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time on First Class.
All right, thanks for having me.